My name is Timmy. Timmy.
Gotta make you understand. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna say goodbye. Never gonna tell a lie and hurt you. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna say goodbye. Never gonna tell a lie and hurt you. I get knocked out, but I get up again. I get knocked out, but I get up again. I get knocked out, but I get up again. I get knocked out, but I get up again. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. We've known each other for so long. Your heart's been aching, but you're too shy to say it. Inside, we both know what's been going on. We know the game and we're gonna play it. I just wanna tell you how I'm feeling. Gotta make you understand. I just wanna tell you how I'm feeling. Gotta make you understand. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna say goodbye. Never gonna tell a lie and hurt you. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna say goodbye. Never gonna tell a lie and hurt you. 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 I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. Get down, get down. I get knocked out, keep me knocked out. I get down, get down. I get knocked out, keep me knocked out. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked out, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. Get down, get down. I get knocked out, keep me knocked out. I get down, get down. I get knocked out, keep me knocked out. You're never gonna keep me down.
All right, welcome to Fall City. Let's go ahead and stand.
There's a grace when the heart is on fire. Another way when the walls are closing in. When I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There was another in the fire standing next to me. There was another in the waters holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding of how I've been set free? There's a cross that bears my burden, and another died for me. There is another in the fire. There is another in the fire.
All my dead left for dead beneath the waters. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. And then should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning? Either way, I won't bow to the things of this world.
And I know I will never be alone. There's another in the fire standing next to me. There's another in the waters holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding of how it sets me free? There is a grave that holds nobody. Power lives in me. There is another in the fire. Oh, there's another in the fire. Oh, there's another in the fire. Oh, there's another in the fire. Oh, I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to him. I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between wears thin. I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us.
There is no other name but the name that is Jesus. He who was and still is and will be through it all. Come with me in the space between now the things unseen and this reckoning.
I know I will never be alone. No, I will never be alone. There's another in the fire standing next to me. There'll be another in the waters holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding how good you've been to me? I count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to him. I can see the roar in the heavens as the space between wears thin. I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us.
Another in the fire. Oh,
Be another in the
fire.
They're going to look a little different this morning. Normally we do a couple songs and then we do communion. We've switched things up a little bit, and so now is this point in time. You guys actually could have a seat. Now is this point in time whenever we're going to take the time to celebrate the sacrifice that was made for us on the cross of Calvary. In the back, we've got individual cups and bread set up. You can grab that anytime throughout the song that you want. We take this time as a church very seriously and realize how blessed we are to have this to celebrate. Because everything in humanity says that we were doomed. Everything in humanity says that we cannot beat what's been beaten. But it's only through the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus that we are able to conquer that. It's only through the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus that we're able to celebrate the life that we have. Because He took our place as the ultimate sacrifice. In the early biblical times, back in the Old Testament, it was a regular thing for a family or a person to come to a festival and offer the life of an animal as a sin offering, as a guilt offering. And what would happen is this animal, this more than likely a lamb or a goat, this animal would have to die because of the way that we messed up. This animal would have to die for our sins, for our inconsistencies. This animal would have to take on our shame. This animal would have to be perfect. If this animal wasn't perfect, let's say they put the lamb and they kill the lamb and they inspect it and they look at the eyes and the tongue and the teeth and the hooves and everything involved. And then they open it up and they find a spot on the liver or they find a spot on the lung. This lamb just gets thrown into a pile of rejects. And it has died for nothing. Now, Jesus, being 100% God and 100% man, is perfect. The perfect sacrifice to die once and for all of us. And so what He does is He offers Himself. If He could have nailed Himself to this cross Himself, He'd have done it. And on this cross, He bears our shame. He bears the weight of the sin of the world. His blood covers us. The life that He gave us life. And in that, He preached the funeral service of death, because it's conquered now. And during the Lord's Supper, during communion, we celebrate that. We celebrate the fact that we have a God who loves us so much that He would take on our sin, that He would take on our shame, that He would hang Himself on a cross so that we can taste freedom, so that we can taste life, and so that we can enter into this next week with hope. As we celebrate, I pray that we can clear our minds of all the worldly stuff, clear our minds of where we're going to go to eat lunch today, clear our minds of all the problems that we know that we've got to take on this week, and that we can just focus on the sacrifice that was made for us and the life that was given for us because of the death, the burial, and the resurrection. Father, we thank You so much for this day. We thank You so much for the opportunity to be able to celebrate life, to be able to remember the sacrifice that was made for us. Father, I pray that in all things we can focus on You. We can focus on Your sacrifice. We can focus on Your victory. Lord, as we commune, help us to clear our minds and our hearts so that we can dine with You. It's in the name of Jesus I pray. Amen.
Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna in the highest. All right. Amen. We're going to switch gears a little bit here. If you can't tell our theme today by the shirts we're wearing, then hopefully after this you'll be able to tell. No one told you life was gonna be this way. Job's a joke, you broke, your love life's the away. It's like you're always stuck in second gear, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your year. But I'll be there for you.
When the rain starts to pour,
I'll be there for you.
like I've been there before.
I'll be there for you.
'Cause you're there for me too.
Still in bed at 10, at work began at 8. You burned your breakfast so far, things are going great. Your mother warned you there'd be days like these, but she didn't tell you when the world would bring you down to your knees. But I'll be there for you.
When the rain starts to pour,
I'll be there for you.
like I've been there before.
I'll be there for you.
'Cause you're there for me too.
Dear God, I just thank you for this day that you've blessed us with. And I thank you for everyone here this morning. And I thank you for everyone out there watching in the comfort of their homes, God. And I just ask that you'd be with Tim this morning as he brings your message. And I just ask that you would be with us as we open our hearts and receive it. It's in your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, you guys can have a seat. Don't know if you guys noticed, but today's theme is friends. No? Yes? No? It's quiet today. What's up? What's up? What the heck is going on, guys? All right, then we're just going to get into it. Since you guys are going to be boring, I guess I have to pick up the slack here, right? So we are in the third week of a series called I Love the 90s. And we decided to do this series. Well, I decided to do this series because I love the 90s. The 90s was my heyday. I've said this before. 1990 was my 5th grade year. I wasn't a very smart kid. I'm not a very smart man either. But I wasn't studious. Book crap wasn't my thing. I was terrible at math. I mean, I just wasn't a studious kid. But what I did love was sports. And one of the best things about the 90s was the shoes, right? You had Air Jordans. You had some really cool stuff. Like I got a pair of shoes that are called, they're called cross trainers, but they're Bo Jacksons. Anybody remember Bo Jackson? Right? Yeah, they were awesome. Yeah, and I've got some. They're worn down, but I've got some. And what's on my bucket list is to get a pair. There's these pair of Bo Jacksons. They're called Bo Breakers. And they've got clear bottoms, and it's to commemorate whenever Bo Jackson struck out and he got mad and he broke the bat over his knee because his thighs were like as thick as my torso. I mean, he was just a stud. He played football and baseball. He was a two-sport guy. So we're in I Love the 90s, and the first week we talked about the Fresh Prince, a man by the name of Will Smith, and he moved from Philadelphia to Beverly Hills. All right, to Bel Air. And he was in a situation where he was pulled out of his world and thrown into a world that he wasn't familiar with. And so he was faced with the task of being in this world, not of this world, but having an effect on the world. And if you were a Fresh Prince fan, if you watched Fresh Prince, then you know that he had an effect on the world that he lived in, right? He went to this private school. In order to set himself apart, he turned his blazer inside out because it had like a floral print on the inside, and he wore his blazer inside out. That's the kind of people we need. We need, in that sermon, we talked about being salt and light. We need people who can bring flavor and preserve the integrity of the human race, right? And then last week, we talked about a song that I loved. It was number 4 on Billboard in 1990. It's called Poison, all right? That Girl Is Poison. And it's as true today as it was in 1990. You can't trust a big butt and a smile. You just can't. You can't. And so we talked about Samson and Delilah, and we talked about the fact that we oftentimes are selfish. And we allow ourselves to be trapped by the things that are our vices and our cockiness, our overconfidence in what we're able to control oftentimes gets us into trouble. This week, we're going to talk about something else in the 90s. I mean, like I said, the 90s were awesome. The clothes were cool. You had cross colors. You had the cool, I still would love to get some, a Dream Team shirt of all the Dream Team on it with like the cartoon heads on it. That would be awesome. I had a shirt that had Larry Johnson, Grandmama, and Muggsy Bogues together in a comic strip on it. I think it might have been a Converse shirt. And I wish I could find that sucker again. I spend too much time scouring eBay trying to find stuff like that. Not to mention, like if any of you guys, I'm pretty sure that maybe Reggie probably has a Bone Thugs and Harmony t-shirt laying around that he can throw my way. I'm just kidding, Reg. It's a rap group from the 90s. I knew you wouldn't have that. So, but the shoes were cool, the music was cool, and the TV and movies were great. We did this last week, but what were some of your favorite TV shows from the 90s? Friends? That's a 90s show? No, I'm just kidding. Anybody else? Now, I know The Simpsons have been around since, well, probably Jesus. There's like 4 million. Yeah, they get everything wrong. But The Simpsons were pretty prominent in the 90s. I don't know if they started in the 90s, but I know that they were prominent in the 90s, and that's something that I still love watching. Now, I had an Air Bart t-shirt. It was Bart Simpson with a number 23 jersey on, pretending like he's dunking a basketball. It was a good thing. But this week, we're going to talk about a TV show that I think everybody has heard of. It's called Friends, right? And the great thing about Friends is it reminds us that we aren't hardwired. We're not created to do life alone. We can't do life alone. As a matter of fact, it's an impossibility. I mean, it took 2 people to bring you to life, right? You can't do that alone, right? If you do, it's weird. But it takes 2 people even to bring you to life. I remember Friends was a TV show that my mom, and her birthday was just the other day, and she passed away several years ago. And as I was looking through some of the clips, and I was thinking about how I was going to put this sermon together, I came up with a big portion of it on my mom's birthday because it was her favorite show. She never missed an episode of this. Like the world would stop. Like if we needed to eat, but Friends was coming on, we're going to starve. We're going to go a night without dinner, right? She even watched like the Oprah special whenever the cast reunion thing. She recorded it on VHS, right? You guys remember those? Some of you don't even know what a freaking VHS is. But she recorded on a VHS, and I remember she wore that sucker out. It was crazy. But the thing about it is the concept of friends is as old as time. It's as old as creation. In Genesis chapter 2, it says this, "Then the Lord said, it's not good for man to be alone." He says, we're not supposed to be alone. We're supposed to have friends. We aren't supposed to be doing life all by ourselves. He says, I'll make a helper who's just right for him. He says, I will make somebody to walk through life alongside of us so that we don't have to be at this alone, so we don't have to figure things out alone, so we don't have to hurt alone, so we don't have to celebrate all by ourselves, so we don't have to explore and adventure and experience alone, right? God knew that we weren't supposed to be alone. He knew that we were created to do life alongside others. We're supposed to have friends. Friends are important. There's this guy in the Bible, his name is Jonathan. He's one of my favorite Bible characters in the Bible. He is like the epitome of friendship, all right? As a matter of fact, Cooper's middle name is Jonathan because of this dude. Because if anything, I want Cooper to be a good friend. I want Cooper to be a good person. I want Cooper to have good friends and to have his friends back, right? But to have friends, first you got to be a friend, right? That's important. I say this to people all the time. If you want to have friends that you can trust, if you want to have friends that you can love, if you want to have friends that speak into your life, you have got to be a friend first. You have to be a friend that can be trusted. You have to be a friend that's there and around, that speaks well into people's lives. And so this guy named Jonathan, I want to kind of set this up. He had a relationship with a fellow named David. All right, he had a great relationship with a fellow named David. Now, David was kind of a big deal. He ended up being one of the most powerful kings of Israel when it was at its peak. Okay, it says this in 1 Samuel. As soon as the boy was gone, David came out from where he'd been hiding near the stone pile. The stone pile was a pile of rocks, not an area where people go to smoke weed, okay? I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but it's a stone pile, not a stoned pile. Then David bowed 3 times to Jonathan with his face to the ground. Both of them were in tears as they embraced each other and said goodbye. Especially David. At last, Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn loyalty to each other in the Lord's name." You see what's going on there? There's a lot going on. Go in peace, for we have sworn loyalty. We will be loyal, but we're not just going to be loyal because we like the same things. We both are UK fans. We both hate Louisville and IU. We both are Chevy guys and not Ford guys, or Ford guys and not Chevy. It's not just because we have a bunch of things in common. It's because we have the Lord in common. So we're going to swear loyalty in the Lord's name. The Lord is the witness of a bond between us and our children forever. Think about that, us and our children forever. Could you imagine pouring into a friendship that you know you're cultivating for future generations? A partnership, a camaraderie. Pouring into a friendship where you know that these people love your children and you love their children. That's more than just being bros, right? It says, then David left and Jonathan returned to town. Now, there was a lot going on here right now, okay? Jonathan was a good friend to David, and that passage doesn't say a whole lot, but let me give you the backstory there, okay? So Jonathan is next in line for the throne. Jonathan's dad's name is Saul. King Saul, okay? Saul was a mighty warrior. He was a great king. He wasn't a terrible king, all right? He stood head and shoulders against everybody else. He knew how to kick butt and take names, all right? But God had anointed David whenever he was young as king. Now, normally, this would have made the next in line angry, right? Because Jonathan stands to hold the throne, to be the most powerful man in the known world, to have all the riches that Saul had, to have people at his beck and call, all right? But Jonathan loved the Lord and was more worried about the Lord's will than he was about his position as prince, than he was about his position of being next in line. You see, he was more worried about God. And because of that, he was worried about God's will. And because of God's will, he developed this friendship with the one who was in God's will, which was David. And so through this series of events, Jonathan found himself right in between this situation between Saul, which is his dad and the king, and David, which is his friend and the future king. And it got pretty sketchy because Saul wanted to kill David. Like he wanted to throw a spear through his face. Kind of sketchy, right? Now, how many of you guys, whenever you were growing up, your parents kind of monitored and were pretty picky about your friends? Anybody? Mine weren't too bad. I'm pretty picky about who my boys hang out with, all right? And let me tell you something. If Cooper wants to hang out with somebody that I dislike so much that I want to throw a spear through their face, we have to have a conversation, right? And I'm going to hope, as Cooper's dad, that he is going to side with me, all right? But the thing about it is Saul had this spirit of jealousy and anger about him. He had this jealous streak that had gotten the best of him. And he felt threatened by David. And so this point in time in history is the festival of the new moons. And I think these guys, kings and royalty, they're always looking for a good excuse to celebrate, right? I think we should throw a festival of the new moons party. Be awesome. We eat like giant turkey legs and drink wine out of giant goblets. That would be a blast. I imagine that's what they're doing there. And so Saul leaves a seat open for David at the table because Saul wants to kill him. All right? But David isn't so sure about showing up because he thinks Saul has beef with him. And so Jonathan says, I got this. During dinner, I'll sit and I'll kind of grab the temperature of my dad. I'll figure out like what kind of vibes he's throwing. All right? And he says, I want you to hang out by the rock pile, and then after dinner, I'll pretend like I'm practicing my archery, which is kind of cool and kind of nerdy, right? Because if he's just like shooting into nowhere, then what are you doing? There's got to be a target. But he says, there's no target. Stand by the rock pile. If I shoot short of the rock pile, you're safe. You can come. You can eat you a giant turkey leg and drink out of a big old goblet, all right? And everything is going to be good. But if I shoot long of the rock pile, if I shoot past where you're at, Dad's planning to kill you. And so ultimately what happens is he shoots far and he lets David know that things aren't good. And so then Jonathan runs up to the rock pile and they kind of have their moment where they say, I got your back. Where they say, we are going to swear our loyalty by God. So he shoots long. Jonathan and David take a minute to appreciate each other's friendship, and then they part ways. This doesn't sound huge, right? This doesn't sound like a big deal, but Jonathan just passed on his chance to get the throne, to get his position back, right? He could have been like, hey, everything's cool, come have dinner. Old Dad could have taken a bite of his turkey leg, grabbed his sword, and cut the dude's head off. All right? Would have made for great TV, great cinema, right? But instead, he honors the Lord and he honors David and he shoots long and lets him know that his life is at risk. He would rather be in the will of God than to have his position as future king. And so Jonathan, I believe, Jonathan is one of the truest examples of friendship in the Bible. Because not only was he a good friend, but the way he lived his life allowed him to have good friends too. Like, I can't honestly say that in his position, I'd have been like, yeah, I'm going to save David. I'd have been like, wait, So if I shoot long here, I lose the palace, I lose my servants, I lose the throne, I lose the riches, I lose the concubines. I mean, you'd have to think about that, right? But he didn't. The way he lived his life and carried himself positioned him to have good people around him. How many of us would love to have nothing but good people around us? We probably wouldn't be dealing with the crap that we're dealing with in this world right now if we could figure out how to position ourselves around good people. I try to do that myself. As a matter of fact, a part of Falls City, most of what I call my inner circle, the people who are absolutely the closest to me, go here. A lot of them started this church together. A lot of them, they know me in ways and on levels and have heard me cry about things and have celebrated with me and have probably forgiven me of stupid crap that I've said over and over again. And they are my inner circle because I know that they love Jesus and they love the church and they love me in that order. Because if they get that out of order, then it's twisted, right? If they love me more than they love Jesus, then they are screwed because I'm nowhere close to as perfect as Jesus. If they love the church more than they love Jesus, then they're about religion, right? If they love me more than they love the church, then I'm kind of an idol, and I would make a terrible idol. I just told you that I don't know that I'd save David's life because I wanted a bunch of concubines, right? My closest friends have to have these qualifications to love Jesus, love the church, and love me in order to reach a level of friendship where they can speak into my life. And that's not to say that I won't listen to anybody else. But if Adam steps up and he says, listen, I notice something's off, or I notice you've been saying this or behaving this way or acting this way, you need to get your crap together. I'm going to take that to heart because I know that Adam loves Jesus, he loves the church, and he loves me. And we've kind of been through some hellfire together, you know? And most of the people that started this church have the permission to do that. You see, Jonathan had a guy like this. Actually, not only was he a friend, but he was also an employee. So it's kind of even better, right? Or it might be a trap because who wants to fire their friend, right? Honestly, it was his friend and his armor bearer. So I'm going to read this passage and then we're going to unpack it like we normally do. All right, so it's in 1 Samuel. It says, one day Jonathan said to his armor bearer, come on, let's go over to where the Philistines have their outpost. But Jonathan didn't tell his father where he was going or what he was doing. Meanwhile, Saul and his 600 men were camped on the outskirts of Gibeah around the pomegranate tree in Migron. Among Saul's men was Ahijah the priest, who was wearing the ephod, the priestly vest. So he kind of had God with him everywhere he was. Whenever they were in battle, they had God with him, and the people knew where he was, right? Among Saul's men was Ahijah the priest, who was wearing the ephod, the priestly vest. Ahijah was the son of Ichabod, the guy that ran from the Headless Horseman in Sleepy Hollow. No, it wasn't that guy. But Ichabod's brother, Ahitub, what's some craziest names? And the son of Phinehas, which was Ferb's nephew, and the son of Eli, the priest of the Lord, who had served at Shiloh. No one realized that Jonathan had left the Israelite camp. Now, why did nobody realize? Probably because it's a bunch of guys sitting around a campfire, drinking wine, eating beef jerky, and talking about good old war stories, right? Talking about the people that they got a chance to stab in the face the weeks before, right? And so to reach the Philistine outpost, Jonathan had to go down in between two rocky cliffs that were called Bozez and Sina. The cliff on the north was in front of Michmash, and the one on the south was in front of Geba. Let's go across to the outpost of those pagans, Jonathan said to his armor bearer. So now he's talking smack, because that's what bros can do, right? Like, whenever we're bros, we can rip on each other. My love language is sarcasm. right? My love language is ripping on my friends. If I don't pick on you, then I probably don't like you. All right? Honestly. If I do pick on you, then we're cool. We're cool. All right? The cliff on the north was Michmash, and he says, let's go across the outpost of the pagans. Jonathan said to his armor bearer, perhaps the Lord will help us, for nothing can hinder the Lord. Now, he has made his purpose statement right there, right? Nothing can hinder the Lord. It doesn't matter what's going on. So you know that the person you're standing beside loves and trusts the Lord, and not only does he believe that he is good, but he believes he's great enough to accomplish whatever it is that he chooses to accomplish. He can win a battle whether he has many warriors or only a few. And here's a big part. Do what you think is best. The armor bearer replied, I'm with you completely. Whatever you decide. In other translations it says, do what you think is best. I am with you heart and soul. Like I've got friends, and then I've got heart and soul friends. All right? Do what you think is best. I'm with you heart and soul. All right then, Jonathan told him, we will cross over and let them see us. If they say to us, stay where you are, we'll kill you, then we'll stop and we won't go up to them. Right? But if they say, come on up and fight, then we'll go up to them. That will be the Lord's sign that he will help us defeat them. All right? Fair enough. When the Philistines saw them coming, they shouted, look, the Hebrews are crawling out of their holes, because 602 men that we know of, or 3 men, have been hiding from these guys for a while. They've been sitting around drinking wine, eating beef jerky, and telling war stories. And so these guys are saying, they're crawling out of their holes. Then the men from the outpost shouted, Jonathan, come up here and we'll teach you a lesson. Now all of a sudden they're talking smack. Come on, climb right behind me, Jonathan said to his armor bearer, for the Lord will help us defeat them. So they climbed using both hands and feet. I don't know why it says that, but there's a reason. Because why would you climb using one hand and one foot? Or just your hands and not your feet, or just your feet and not your hands, right? Which is called walking. But for some reason, it says they climbed using both hands and feet. And the Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer killed those who came behind them. They killed some 20 men in all. I love this part. Gosh, I love this part. And their bodies were scattered over about half an acre. How cool is that, right? I mean, that's pretty cool to think 2 guys scattered 20 dudes' bodies over a half acre. That's cinema. I picture it. They're standing back to back. And the loud music starts to build, and the drones flying around in a circle, and you can see them. They got blood splattered all over their face, and all of a sudden it pans out, and there's nothing but like blood and random body parts laying in the field around them. I should be a director, right? I should. That would be amazing. And so as I read this, there are some things about friendship, relationship. There are things about the will of God and trusting God that I found. The first one is friends are there for you. That's why we sing that song. I'll be there for you, right? It makes sense. I'll be there for you. Even in the friends logo. By the way, you guys like my shirt? I know a guy. He made this for me. So friends are there when you need them, right? And if they're really good friends, they're there when you don't need them either, right? I have these things I call fridge friends, right? Do you guys have fridge friends? They're the friends that come into your house and they don't have to ask to go to the fridge and get something to drink, right? They just do, right? They're the friends that aren't afraid to reach in and drink the last beer, right? They just do. They know how the microwave is set. They know where to find the popsicles and the ice cream. They know where everything's at. Those are fridge friends. They can take their socks and shoes off and put their feet up on your couch, right? Those are friends. Those are the ones that aren't just there when you need them, but are there whenever you don't need them. sometimes they're there whenever you don't want them there either, right? But when you do need them, it's really good to have them, right? When you do need them, it's really good to have them. The armor bearer says, do what you think is best. I'm with you. Heart and soul. I'm with you completely, whatever you decide. He's there for him, right? So Jonathan just said to his armor bearer, we're going to sneak away from the rest of the army. We're going to find the Philistines, and we're just going to kill them. No big deal. Just the two of us. Just us guys. We're gonna kind of go off the grid here, off the map here, and we're just going to go kill some guys. Fair enough? This was the warrior version of hold my beer, right? Like there's 600 guys that are hiding, and now this guy Jonathan says, no, just the two of us are going to go kill him. Now, there are a lot of things going on here. No matter how good a friend he is to Jonathan, he still has to answer to the king, right? If you think about it, this is his armor bearer. He is an employee of the king, and no matter how things go, he is going to have to answer to Saul. This is just crazy. Do you guys have a friend that always talks you into doing crazy stuff? The instigator of the group? He's the first person to take his shirt off, right? He's the first person to take the dare to try and run full bore through the drywall to see if he can make it through. And he's the first guy that you go to visit in the emergency room, right? We all knew that guy growing up. If you didn't know that guy growing up, you probably were that guy growing up, right? You're the one with the scars on your head. And then C, this means certain death one way or the other, right? Because if you go up and these guys kill you, guess what? You're dead. If you kill them and you go back, you still have to answer to the king, and more than likely, you're dead. Because we know how Saul feels about war heroes that aren't him. He throws spears at them, right? And so this isn't really a good idea. But the person who is carrying it out is probably the only one who could pull it off. The armor bearer, he doesn't know that. Unless he's been close enough to this person. Unless he's been in the life of this person, unless he truly knows this person, unless he's been through highs and lows with this person for long enough that he can know that this guy can pull it off. And I think that the armor bearer knows that this guy can pull it off. So he says, whatever you decide, I am with you, heart and soul. He would have had to seen Jonathan at his best, and he would have had to have seen Jonathan at his worst. He would have had to have been there to see that he was capable of pulling off this greatness. That's what makes a friend a friend, is that they are there. They've been there. Highs and lows. The armor bearer would have had to have seen examples of his faith that were so great that he knew God would come through for them. He would have had to have witnessed this. He would have had to have been there. And because he was there, now he's in this moment alongside Jonathan, this armor bearer, this man who is at one point in time simply an employee who has become a friend and now is about to become a war hero. I want you to think about your best times in your life. Like your wedding day. Who was there with you? I want you to think about the worst times in your life, like when you realized that you were married forever. Who was there with you? Right? Think about your best and your worst times. Who was with you in those moments? Who wasn't there? Who was there but not engaged? Who was supposed to be there that wasn't? Who was supposed to be engaged that wasn't? Think about the times when you needed someone to talk to. Who was available? More importantly, not just who was available, but who made themselves available. Who was there? Who was there for you? Think about when you needed help moving a couch. That's a true test of friendship, right? Who was there? Who was there when you needed help moving the couch? Which leads me to my second point. Real friends pivot with you, right? They do. They pivot with you. Real friends pivot. I even think I got a picture. Do I have a picture? Oh, there it is. Real friends pivot. Right? Do you guys remember the scene from that episode where he screams, "Pivot!" One day, Jonathan said to his armor bearer, "Let's go." Right? We can't just sit here. We can't get stagnant. We can't just sit here amongst these guys and talk and talk and talk while more Philistines show up to kick our butts. Let's go. But Jonathan didn't tell his father what he was doing. Meanwhile, Saul and the other 600 men were camped on the outskirts, hiding, right? Amongst Saul's men were like the priest and his family, were people that were important to him, but refused to tell him no because of who he was. And they were so involved in being yes men to Saul that nobody realized that Jonathan had left the Israelite camp, right? They didn't realize that because they weren't engaged. They weren't there. I mean, they were there, but they weren't there, right? You'll encounter moments in your life when it's time for you to take a next step, where it's time for you to say, "Come on, let's go." And guess what? A friend will understand that. Not only will they understand it, but they will encourage and equip and help you take that next step. Think of a time when you had a major change in your life. Who did you lose in that change? Who fell off? Who stopped contacting you? Who put the knife in your back? Who was it that you thought knew you and you thought you knew that devastated you as you're taking this next step? Do you have friends who were friends until it came time to pivot? They were comfortable with the convenience of the friendship, right? Until they realized that you were moving and they didn't want to move. That you were going to fight and they didn't want to go fight. They wanted to sit around and drink wine and eat beef jerky and tell war stories instead. So they stayed and they let you go on. And they didn't equip you, and they didn't encourage you, and they didn't help you. See, this isn't what Jonathan's armor bearer did. He was a heart and soul friend, good and bad, tough. When it's time to cry together, when it's time to celebrate together. Was this crazy? Yes, it was crazy. Was he afraid? I'm sure he was afraid. Was he going to leave his friend hanging, though? No. Because he was a heart and soul friend. You see, the armor bearer could have ran and told the king Jonathan's plan, and guess what? He would have been a hero for saving the king's son's life. He would have been the man who kept the prince from certain death. But instead he said, "Do what you think is best. I'm with you. I'm with you, heart and soul." And so they carry out this plan, and they went from comfort in the camp and surrounded by 600 bodyguards, if you will, to just the two of them, spying on the Philistines and getting ready to deliver a butt whooping. Those are the kind of people I want around me, right? That's a pretty big pivot, if you ask me. You go from comfort to getting ready to fight, just the two of you, right? If you ask me, that dude would totally help you move a couch, even upstairs. Unless it's the one with the recliners in the end, nobody should be submitted to that. I think it's probably going to take the other 600 guys to carry that couch up the stairs. The third thing is, friends got your back, right? They have your back. Friends have your back. You know what they ask you? How you doing? Or, how you doing? Right? But he means it like, how you doing? It says, so they climbed up using both hands and feet, and the Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer killed those who came behind him. He had his back, right? They killed some 20 men in all, and their bodies were scattered over about a half an acre. So he had his back. The armor bearer climbs up the mountain with him, right? He doesn't say, I'll wait here. If things go good, holler at me, throw down all the plunder. That way it saves us some steps. I'm just trying to be smart about this here. I'm trying to be calculated about it. No, he climbs up with him, more than likely carrying Jonathan's armor. You want to know why? Because he was his armor bearer, right? And so not only did he climb up with him, but he carried stuff with him. And then when they get to the top of this mountain and they see these Philistines, what does his friend do? He equips him, right? He puts a helmet on his head. He equips his mind. He protects his mind. He doesn't let things get to him and say, oh man, we really screwed up. No, he keeps his confidence about him. He puts a breastplate on him, which protects his heart, this vital part of his body that's beating, this heart and soul, right? Who knows that God is going to come through for him. He puts the loin guards so he can have forward motion, so he is always moving forward. He's not taking steps back. He's not running backward. He is moving forward in his life. And he also gives him a sword so that he can stab people in the face, which I think is important. Why else would you give somebody a sword? But to watch him stab the opposition in the face. And as Jonathan is mowing down Philistines, the armor bearer does something that he probably doesn't have to. He has his back, right? Because his back is oftentimes exposed. And so he has his back, and anybody that tries to come up behind him, he takes care of it for him. He is covering Jonathan's blind spots. And we all have blind spots. We all have things that we do or these idiosyncrasies that we have that we don't realize, but the people who are closest to us can see them. And so he covers those blind spots. Every once in a while, he's asking, how you doing? How you doing? You good? What's in front of you? Because I'm not paying attention to that because I've got your back. Because he's not just sitting and watching, but he's fighting with him. He's covering his back. And the result is awesome. 20 men scattered over a half an acre. I was trying to think about that. And the lot that my house sits on is a half acre. And I'm like, really? 20 men worth of body parts and blood in my yard? It's a little crazy, right? Now let me ask you this. Who do you have in your life that will help you scatter 20 bodies over a half acre? I can think of one for sure. I'm not going to, never mind. Maybe two. I've got one that I know would do it just for fun with me. And I've got another that I think it would take a little convincing, but I think I could talk him into it. But seriously, who do you have in your life that'll go to battle with you? Who do you have in your life that will take on something as scary as 20 warriors ready to kill you? I want you to think about that. Actually, this is my challenge. If you have people who fit that category, your job this week is to contact them and let them know that you know. Contact them this week and say, I know that you've got my back. I know that you're a heart and soul friend. I know that you've been there when things haven't been great, and I remember you being there with me when it's time to celebrate. Reaffirm that relationship, and then be that person in return to them as well. If the friendship is what it's supposed to be, you can't tell who the Jonathan is and who the armor bearer is because you both have each other's backs. And you're both equipping each other, right? And if you can't think of anyone in that category, Begin to size people up in your life. Size them up. Find those people. My advice is they have to love God, love the church, and love you in that order. That means spiritually, mentally, emotionally, they've got their crap together and they can be a good friend. And they're capable of having good friends. If you are genuinely looking for godly people to be in your inner circle, to be more than just acquaintances, but heart and soul friends, He will place them in your life. He'll put them in your life. So yes, friends are important. As a matter of fact, they're a necessity. They're so great a necessity that God created them for us. Friends are there for you, right? Friends will pivot with you. And friends will always have your back. They will equip you. They will pray for you. They will pray with you. They will cry with you. They will laugh with you. If they're a real friend, they will laugh at you, right? As the band comes up, because they were looking all awkward over there. Like, what am I supposed to do? Well, kids, I'm wrapping it up. You're supposed to come up here and tickle the strings behind me. Stole my thunder. Man, if we just had Ryan here with the keyboard, people would have come to know Jesus by now. Anyways, listen, I know that we're having fun with this series, but the fact of the matter is you show me your 5 closest friends, and I'll tell you where your life is going to be in 5 years. If your 5 closest friends suck, then in 5 years your life is going to be like a 5-gallon bucket of suck. It is. It's going to be terrible. If your friends are good, if your friends are great, if they love God, love the church, and love you, you're probably going to be a lot better off. Even in the bad times, you're going to be positioned to have a perspective that allows you to see God's purpose in anything that's going on. And I pray that we can do that. I pray that we can build up our group of inner circle friends, our group of heart and soul friends. Or in some cases, I pray that we can whittle down this mass of acquaintances to know at least who our heart and soul friends are. I mean, he's excited about it. Why can't you guys be? So as we sing, I want you to consider that. And if you need people to come alongside of you in this journey, maybe for you that next step is a relationship with Jesus. Maybe for you that next step is a deeper relationship with Jesus. And we here at Fall City, we want to be there for you. We want to help you through the pivot, and we want to have your back. So as we sing, if you need anything, grab hold of one of us. All right? Grab hold of one of us.
You guys can go ahead and stand. I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. You came along and put me back together. Every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you.
Have a good week. No one told you life was gonna be this way. Your job's a joke.